Greetings from Scouse Farm on a beautiful sunny day, wind free as well, which is a bonus, down here in Dingle, not far from work in Liverpool. And I'm very close to the waterfront now, and I'm about to show you what are known as the Dockers Steps. A few missing cats knocking about around here, which is a shame. And they're also known as the Herculaneum Steps because they're named after what was known as the Herculaneum Dock, and that was a dry dock or a graving dock here in Liverpool, where they used to bring some ships up, drain the water out, and then they could work on them underneath in dry conditions. Because as you can imagine, it's very difficult to repair the underneath of a ship when it's already in the water. And I was thinking, why they called Herculaneum Steps, and then I thought it was just because it was named after the dock. And there's also, if I spin you around now, up that way, just up there at the end of this terrace, and then a little bit right, there's a pub which I have filmed the outside of as well, called the Herculaneum. And I thought it was named after the pub, but then I thought, well, the pub couldn't have been there that long, like 500 years or whatever. And again, I assumed it might have been named after a ship, but it turns out it was named after a pottery company that was on this site. So where I'm about to show you through these trees when we walk down these steps, there was a pottery company that operated here between 1794 and 1841. And then when they finished work in this area, it went into disuse until the docks, the Herculaneum docks, were designed by George Fosbury Lister and opened in 1866. And they operated up until 1972. And then they fell in, the dock itself was closed, so the steps, which were for worker access from the top here near the terraces all the way down to the docks and the Liverpool waterfront, which is where you're going to join me now as we walk down there. And then I thought, well, why did they call the dock or the pottery company Herculaneum? And I thought, well, maybe it was named after a ship. It sounds like the name of a ship, but it turns out it's named after a famous ancient city, Roman city called Herculaneum, which was very, very famous for being the first city discovered, not after, but affected by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. So when you talk about Mount Vesuvius, people always think of Pompeii, and I don't know if it was taught in schools that way. I seem to recollect hearing about Pompeii in school. So I think when you think about Mount Vesuvius erupting, the volcano in Italy, you always assume it covered Pompeii. But it turns out that in 1709, by accident, because some, well, Italians, because it's modern day Italy, were building a well or trying to dig wells, they dug through the ground and found basically a buried city, which was the city called Herculaneum, which is in modern day Campania in the country of Italy. So it's named after that. And underneath, which was quite fascinating, I just read up a little bit about Herculaneum in Campania, and when it was covered with the pyroclastic flow from the volcano, it preserved not only the concrete structures and the stone and things like that, not concrete but stone, it preserved wood. So it just completely covered and made it airtight, like vacuum packed basically a city. So there was even like skeletal remains that were in great condition. There was animals found, and also, who's that? And also food, which was completely preserved in its original state. And considering what they pass off as food, in quotation marks, in supermarkets these days, all of that processed, toxic, synthetic garbage, you're probably better off going over there and having a skanky chicken drumstick from 79 AD. Probably be better for you. But that's what these docks, or this dock you're about to see, was named after. So when you dig down through the history, it's named after that ancient city. And this is a beautiful little pair of fountains there, looking good, isn't it? And the reason these are here is because when it was disused as a dock in 1972, this was all flattened and turned into a car park. And then in 2004, a private developer built this gated complex, as you can see, There's the gates down that way, and they left, I think this was dry dock number 4, so you can see the shape of it from the waterfront. They would have got the vessels in, backed them into this area, and they could work on them without fear of the tide coming in and out, etc. So there was 4, I think, in total before it was completely disused. And behind, you can see how steep these steps are as I'm pointing back up the top. You can just see probably in the background the walls. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video when I get to the bottom of these steps, and I'm going to take you around because there's some fascinating historical pieces of architecture underneath those walls. And that is part and parcel of what was the pottery buildings. When they were disused, all of these, what are known as casemates, were placed here, which are now grade 2 listed. And these casemates were used to store oil and other things to try and keep them out of the weather and keep them safe. Thank you. And it also had its own station on the Liverpool Overhead Railway, which unfortunately closed in 1956, and then it was smashed down and demolished in about 1958, and again just levelled and turned into a car park. But these steps themselves, we've still got some old stone here, so it's not all brick. Quite like seeing all that old stone. And there's, I didn't know that was there, but I've just noticed it. We've got a nice little King's Broad Arrow Ordnance Survey benchmark there, which you can see, and that denotes a specific height above sea level. So that'll be listed somewhere on a database, so you can tell at what level or what height the Herculaneum Steps are in Dingle. And there's a few murals on the way down the steps that you can see. There was one at the top from New York. We've got this one from Canada there, from Montreal. And as mentioned, I'm going to have to pause the video at the bottom because I can't cut through here because it's private property and it's gated. But when we get round, you'll see what I'm talking about, because these casemates are fantastic. There's another nice mural there. So this one, it's a bit flaky, but this one is from the Liverpool Dockers Union. Right to work. I don't know if that's done on purpose, but I think we can all see the mistake there. But maybe that's how it was spelled or spelt back in the day. Gives a job. Oh, there's that Boys from the Black Stuff fella. Gives a job. So a lot of particular social history for Liverpool here on this mural. I didn't know that was here actually. I just thought, when I read it, there was a mural, I thought it just meant those little placards that were on there. But what I'm going to do now is, because I have to walk around the front, instead of just listening to me chatting nonsense as we walk around, I'm going to press pause, and then next time you see me, we'll be standing in front of a brilliant section of what was the wonderful Liverpool Overhead Railway. Boo, I'm back. I've teleported outside, like that Jaguar thing there. You know, that car company that decided to alienate 99% of its customer base with a horrendous advertising campaign, and wonder why sales have plummeted since. But let's leave that one for someone else to talk about. And look at that, you can see how steep the steps would have been because of this cutting straight down the stone, as you can see there. And I'm now standing in the car park of a gym, and this is part of the old Liverpool Overhead Railway, when we used to have pride in what we did, as you can see by this southern extension, which was put here in 1896. And now look at what we're being subjected to architecturally and socially. And yet again, I had no idea this was visible down this way, because I'm usually on the top. I'm not down this way because there's nowhere for me to be down this way. It's all commercial. My job's in residential. But that is fantastic. And unfortunately, it was closed. But if you are interested, there's loads of videos on YouTube about the Liverpool Overhead Railway, and it was brilliant, which meant they had to destroy it because it worked. So we can't have that, can we? All of the names of the engineers, the chairman and whatnot are all inscribed in the sandstone, which is fantastic. And this little section here, somewhere near here, was where the station was for the dockers to get off the overhead railway and get down into the dock and get a day's work done. And as mentioned before, what you're looking at now, another thing I didn't know was here, are these little archways, which are known as casemates. And these are grade 2 listed, and without researching, there's 61 of them apparently, because this is the last one I can see. And casemates are originally used in fortifications, where you've got, let's say you've got a castle and it's got a fascia, a front elevation. So for ease of demonstration, this is the front of your castle wall, and then you would tunnel through an arch or any sort of tunnel, and then that would then go through a specific amount of feet until it meets the second inner wall of the castle, so that if you do lose the front and you have to retreat, you can go through there, get behind the second fortification, and then you can refill this. So it makes it more difficult for people to get through with battering rams and things like that. Or you could like pour hot oil from the top over to try and get them on the way in. But it was originally for fortification purposes. But these casements that you can see that stretch all the way down there, and then there's a gate, and then that's where you've just been. On the other side is that private development, which was the dock. So these casements are, or were used for flammable oil storage, and then all the things that would come in off the maritime trade, if it was flammable or whatever, you could store it in here and pay to have it stored. So it was completely fireproof as best it can be, and if it did go up in flames, it would only engulf one little section within a number of, I don't know, maybe it's, just think of it as old school big yellow self-storage, but a lot more beautiful to look at. And that's what these are casemates. You'll see them as well on battleships and tanks and military. What's that? Oh yeah, got a bit worried there, but it's just water running down from the top. Yeah, so they're still used for military purposes, but in this case it was just used to store oil. What a fantastic little spot. And I realised when I was walking down, a friend of mine who's called Angela, who lives around here, and she's got a YouTube channel called Spooky Geek. And if you like cats, have a look at the Spooky Geek channel, because she's got some good videos of her and her cats opening boxes of presents together and things like that. So it's worth a look, and I'll leave a link in the video description down below to that channel, Spooky Geek. A little bit of water there, nice bit of sound of running water. So thank you all very much for watching. I want to leave it there, and Scouse Farm, we'll see you all again soon.